Business is a game. The cool thing with business being a game is that everybody can play the game of business. In the past 25 years, I learned that the key to becoming successful and rich in business is not to do more smart things, but actually to do less stupid things. So in the coming videos in this series, I'll talk about some of the fundamentals for playing the game of business. Because what we see most of the time is that people run into business. So they're like, whoa, I need to start a business, right? I need to be an entrepreneur. I need to be independent. And they run in, right? But they don't read the rules, right? You should read the rules, right? Because playing the game of business without knowing the rules is simply put stupid, right? And to put it more straight is you cannot play the game unless you know, among other things, the language. So, Palle, what is this language of business? So what is the language of business? The thing is that some smart people have come before us, right? So we don't always need to reinvent things, right? So we can listen to some of the smart people that came before us. And Warren Buffett, he says that accounting is the language of business. It's cool, awesome, right? So I'll just learn accounting and then I'll become super, super rich. That's not really how the game works, right? So a lot of people are they like to watch soccer games, football games, all kinds of games at home, right? But that doesn't mean that they can play the game. That doesn't mean they can be a coach and teach this thing. So knowing the language just lets you read the board, lets you understand a little bit if the ball in the soccer game is offside or onside, right? But it is the fundamentals, right? So first you need to learn the language and then you need to play the game. The thing with the language is that if knowing the language, right, knowing accounting would make you rich, then all accountants would be rich. And they're not, right? So that means that that's not it, right? It's the same thing with bankers, right? Like bank advisors in your local bank, right? If knowing banking and knowing how the system works would make you rich, then all the bank advisors would be rich. They're not, right? So that's not it, right? But still, we need to know the language in order to play the game. Not necessarily all the gritty details, but we need to understand enough of it. So a mentor I had 25 years ago, he told me that we need to look at business and managing things as an airplane. So an airplane is just one big chunky car that's running around on a very short road. If it doesn't get enough thrust or speed, right? And it's just like a big car going around, right? So we need to push this airplane. It needs enough speed so it can get lift and lift off and take off, right? And business is sort of the same. It's sort of like an airplane, right? So when we start a business, then it's just a big clunky thing on a road that's not very long, right? So the thing with an airplane is that an airplane has a lot of dials, right? And we're oh, there's a stick and then there's all these buttons and there's a radar and all kinds of stuff, right? In the past, there was 5, 6, 7 people inside an airplane in order to make it go into the air and oh, watch this. Now we have assistance from AI and computer systems, right? So now it only takes two pilots to fly a plane, right? But if we look at a plane and then compare it to a business, right? Would you feel safe going to the airport? You board a plane and then the captain of the plane is he's looking like this and he's ooh, that's a lot of dials, right? I wonder what they do, right? So you kind of it's sort of the same as with your business, right? So you wouldn't want someone to run your business who doesn't understand all the different dials, right? It's the same with the plane, right? You don't want to go into a plane, right? Because like the importance of knowing the rules is that if you're going 180 miles per hour and you can't see anything, right, in a plane or in a car, then someone is going to die, right? We don't want to die, right? It's the same thing with like the business, right? You just go push the speeder, right? And you're not looking at the dials. You don't understand where you're going, right? So like the same with business, right? So like, well, you don't want to go 180 miles per hour and not being able to see anything, right? Because then you're screwed, right? Another reason why we want to know the rules of the game of business is that if we don't understand the rules, then there can be misinterpretation. So I have two short commercials that's kind of funny from Danish. So it's betting commercials. I'm very sorry about that. If you're underage, you should go hide somewhere, right? Not be addicted to gambling. But they say a little bit about like understanding the language of the games, right? Like you want to bet on it. So let's watch the first
Ny aktivitet i feltet. Stevens kører op til de Klerk, som har lavet et hul. Og det er altså et kæmpe hul, han har fået skabt sig. Men Stevens forsøger omgående at lukke hullet. Fascinerende. Men her må de Klerk fascinere. Ærgerligt og smukt på samme tid. Men han er næppe færdig for i dag. Han skal bare have et ordentligt hul, han kan udnytte, som han plejer.
Spil på fodbold, håndbold og cykelbold på Odset.
So the thing here with understanding the game and understanding the language of the game is that when we look at this, right, it's a woman, right? It's like a little bit macho commercial, right? And she's listening to her husband watching someone biking in competition, right? And then the speaker says, "Oh, so he's creating a gap." So in Danish, that's like he created a hole, right? And then the other guy is trying to close the gap. So one is trying to increase the hole, increase the gap. The other one is trying to close the gap, like close the hole, right? So one is digging and the other one is putting dirt back into the hole, right? So it's important, right, to understand the language, right? And it's important to understand the business you want to invest in. Because again, the second quote from Warren Buffett with this business thing, right, and understanding is that he says, never invest in a business you cannot understand. So that's why Warren Buffett, like, he has some rules, he has some standards. So he never invests in, for instance, airplane companies, right? Because he lost a lot of money investing in airplanes, right? The same thing, he doesn't invest in tech companies. And then you can say like, but Warren Buffett has invested in Apple. But Warren doesn't see Apple as a tech company. He sees Apple as a brand. So he's investing in a brand, not in a tech company. So there's a difference. And he understands brand value, right? So that's why he bought some stocks in Apple. But he says like, never invest in a business that you cannot understand. That's actually like pretty smart advice. Like, so before we start a business, then we should like at least try to understand the business a little bit, right? And we need to understand the language and we need to understand how the cockpit works, right? So we don't go into the cockpit and we can't see anything and we're just flying blind, right? So we're not like the typical business owner. So the typical business owner will be like this and they're like, what is happening here, right? What does this button do, right? What does this number mean, right? And then you get some pieces of paper and you just throw them away. And then if the bank calls and say like, we need more money, you're like, oh, let's grow this thing. Let's run some SEO. Let's optimize the SEO. Let's run some ads, right? So it's important to understand language. It's important to understand the rules of the game, right? So we need to understand the business that we are getting into. So you can see that we can compare it a little bit to going to the doctor, right? So if I go to my doctor here where I live and he's looking at me and he says like, Palle, you look fine, right? You look good. Right? So if the doctor wants to see like what is happening under the hood, if we compare to a car, right, then he would need to go and get some blood samples for me, right? And then he can see if like there's something wrong with me underneath, right? It's the same with a business, right? So when you look at a business, you look at it from the outside, and like we've had that a lot of times historically, right? So we have another video with Enron. So like on the outside, it looks like everything is going fine, right? Everything is well, everything is good, right? Everything is super duper, like in the Lego movie. The thing is, in business and in life, what you can't see will kill you, right? So like you can't necessarily see the cancer that is growing, right? So you need to take some tests in order to see that, right? So it's very important, right? And it's important to know where to dig, what tests to take, and what numbers to look at in your business. So you're not flying in this plane where the pilot is sitting in this plane, you're going like 600 miles per hour, right? And he's looking outside the window to figure out where you are, right? You don't want that, right? So it's important to have something we can call optics, right? So like when we play a card game, so I have the illustration here, right? And we can see like most of the cards, right? So we can see the cards. So we're not playing the game of business blind, right? So when we create a business, right, and then in the game of business, then one of the most important things we need is actually a dashboard. Because the dashboard shows like how much fuel do we have left? How fast are we going? Where are we going, right? Maybe there's like a piece of navigation in our dashboard in our business. It's sort of like a car, right? So we can see how fast we're going, right? We have some orange lamps, some red lamps that will go off, like say, like, okay, there's something with the engine, right? Now we need to go have a service, right? So like maybe we need to go and get some different accounting papers and like look at the numbers. How our business doing? So the dashboard shows right now how are we performing right now, right? So it's important in business to have this dashboard to see like how are we low on cash, how's cash doing, right? How are we doing with like getting customers in, right? So like all these things. So every business kind of like need a dashboard, right? So that is like very important in the game of business. The second thing to have in a business that is very important is a scoreboard. And a lot of business owners, they kind of like have like, I have a goal, I have a dream, right? But they don't really know what it is, right? And the thing is that you kind of need to have a scoreboard, right? For like if you're playing a soccer match and it says like 3,108, you have no idea what the scoreboard is, right? And if you can't read the score in a game, right? If you're going to watch a cricket game or you're watching tennis or you're watching soccer, if you can't read the scoreboard, right, you have no idea who's winning and who's losing. And the same thing in your business. If you don't have a scoreboard, then you don't know if you're winning or if you're losing, right? So it's important to have a scoreboard. And it's very important to understand how the scoreboard works, right? I'm not saying that every business needs like something like this with like looking at all these numbers and all these things, right? Sometimes it's just the simple things. Like I mentioned in the beginning of this video, the key thing to getting rich is not necessarily to do more smart things. It's to do less stupid things, right? And in business and in sports in general, in the games of all these things, then we always come back to the fundamentals. So the fundamentals in the games, learning the language, learning the rules, setting up a dashboard, setting up a scoreboard, right? And that brings us quite far in understanding the business we are investing in. So that's kind of like the business fundamentals that we need to look at, right? And then you can hate Elon Musk or you can love Elon Musk. I don't really care, right? But again, we need to learn from the people who have had success and have gone like before us. So 3 pieces of paper that is very, very, very important in business. So the first one is a balance sheet. The second one is an income statement. And the third one is a statement of cash flow. So these 3 pieces of paper are like the first thing with like learning the language of business, is understanding these 3 pieces of paper and getting to know what does that mean. So in order to understand that, then a good example is something called Enron. So Enron was a company that was very successful on paper from 1988 to 2001. There's a YouTube, there's a video on YouTube you can watch. It's called The Smartest Guys in the Room. So the CEO there, he said, the only difference between me and the people judging me is they weren't smart enough to do what we did. And Enron kind of like went from the peak, and then it just collapsed. And a lot of people lost all their money. But also, a lot of people gained a lot of money. So the difference there was that some people knew the rules of the game. They knew how to read these 3 pieces of paper, and some did not. So some could play the game, some understood the game that was being played, and some did not. So some people lost money. So that's part of the next video in this series. So subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you like this video, give it a like. If you don't like it, give it a dislike. What do you think about business as a game and like learning the language and setting up a dashboard and scoreboard for your business? Write that in the comments below. If you want to, we have a membership on our website. You can join. It's called like Business Intelligence, or like the Business Fundamentals, on siggiway.com. There's a link to the next video in this series up here. Thanks for watching. Have a wonderful day.